Hey guys, what's up? It is week 434, something like that. And let's just jump right into the reviews. The first one up is from Eureka Films, and this is Flaming Brothers with Chow Yun-fat and Alan Tang. Yeah, so Chow Yun-fat, obviously a huge Hong Kong star. This is before he was super huge, but this is a heroic bloodshed movie. And in the back it tells you right away, just with the rise of stuff like City on Fire and Better Tomorrow, that these were kind of going up in the ranks in popularity in Hong Kong. So we follow a pair of brothers. Well, they're not actual brothers, but they were raised on the streets together, so they're basically like, you know, brothers in that aspect. And we see a little bit of their kind of relationship, like stealing to survive, and a young girl takes like pity on them, and she gives them food, and that kind of forms this bond, even though the little girl kind of moves away. So we fast forward, and these guys are grown up, and they realize that the criminal element in that area kind of controls everything. So they start to be involved with like crime, and by the time we like see them as adults, they're already pretty well established. And there is the fourth uncle or fourth brother, who is kind of a ruthless gang lord who kind of rules everything, and he's just a shady piece of shit. And he wants to push drugs on Chow Yun-fat and Tang, which they don't want to do, a la The Godfather, right? You know, we don't want drugs in our whatever. So what happens during their big celebration is he talks to him, and he's supposed to go talk business. But these guys pulled a fast one, and they kidnap Chow Yun-fat. This starts this huge kind of war between these two factions, and there's scenes of violence between them. But a huge chunk of this movie is a lot of drama and relationships, and these two brothers kind of surviving and meeting these other falling in love, really having these relationships, and there is a lot of it. The shootouts in the film are probably some of the best. I mean, all the Hong Kong action shootouts at this time from the 80s and early 90s are always amazing, and it's actually really hard to watch American action movies now, because after you've seen anything from Hong Kong from this time period, they're just worthless. The action movies now are just worthless to me. They're hard to watch. They're boring, and I don't like the way they cut their action. I've been like rewired into after you see like the Hong Kong action from this time, that there's just nothing that really compares to it. And the bullet play and stuff like that is just intense. So, like I said, there's a lot of drama here, and I do think at times that you feel it, and I don't mind drama at all. It makes a lot of, you have to have it for the impact, for the heroic bloodshed later on, and they do that really well. And by the end of this movie, I was 100% in. It was very emotional and heartfelt, and the characters aren't always perfect. They're gangsters, so at times they're rough around the edges, but somehow in these movies you always manage to like them, and they definitely do this. They do romanticize the bloodshed and everything like that, but that's just action in general. I think that Chow Yun-fat's great, but Alan Tang is more of a lead in here than they share leads, but Alan Tang, I think, is bigger lead. He has more time here. So this movie takes place jumping around a bunch of different countries and things like that, and locations. A big chunk of the film is in Bangkok, where there's a lot of gun trading and things like that, and that's some of the best stuff, I think. And the end shootout, like I said, I keep talking about this, is intense. Is it as hard-boiled or the Killer level? It's close. I mean, it's intense. With those movies, I feel like Hard-Boiled and The Killer are just non-stop action, if that makes sense. This is more in line with A Better Tomorrow, where we have like the drama, almost like borderline, where you feel like there's like, it's not really there, like in something like Point Break. It's just like, oh, this feels very like homoerotic between the characters, like this like bromance thing that's like really deep. And they even make jokes about this, like they're like, you guys need to get married. A couple people may say they'll know you're not gay, but of course, from the beginning of this film, that character that disappeared is going to come back into Chow Yun-fat's life, and that's kind of where we see like a lot of like love blossom, and Tang also finds a girlfriend and all this is his most tragic stuff in here. And there's times when I'm watching this where I'm like, maybe it's going to have a happier ending than usual, but they're incredibly tragic. That's just the genre. The villain in here is a ruthless son of a bitch. I was so glad when he finally when he finally gets his just desserts. I was relieved, because he is such a fucking asshole in this movie. He's just and he's the type that's just he doesn't have any like moral code, and he doesn't have any what's the word I'm looking for, anything like to offer in terms of like good, like he wants to be tough, but when it push comes to shove, he'll do anything to survive. There is one scene where somebody gets shot with a machine gun by like 20, 30 people. And as they say in the commentary, Artie Venema and Mike Leader, never seen anybody get hit with that many squibs. And I'm trying to think, I was like, maybe the guy in RoboCop, Mr. Kenny or whatever, maybe he got that many squibs, but it's hard for us to think, man. There's tons of squibs on this guy. So like the action's great, the violence is great. There's a lot of squibs going off on people's heads. Like they'll do squibs on the back of their heads, which is something you don't really see all the time. There's a couple side characters that they get involved, and you're like, oh, how's this character being introduced this late into the movie? And he disappears. He's not late in the movie, but then he pops up at the very end. You're like, okay, he kind of serves his purpose. But almost everybody in this film has a bad end. There's not many characters in here, and there's like last week, or is that this week? I think that's this week. Yeah, this week as well. This whole theme with this whole week, I guess, is dead children. And we have a couple movies from Hong Kong where they feature kids being murdered in very brutal ways. But I thought Flaming Brothers was great. And I loved it. I was invested, and the love stories work, but the action works even more. And the credits, they show all these scenes that some of them aren't even in the movie, where you can have these characters bond and all that kind of stuff like that. As far as the features, I was really happy with them. New audio commentary by action cinema experts Mike Leader and Arnie Venema, who both have lived in Hong Kong and frequented Hong Kong many times over the years. Mike Leader's worked in tons of movies, so these guys are experts. Also, they can do cultural relevance and stuff like that, so that helps too and adds context as well. We have the original Cantonese audio, which is what I went with in the English dub. I feel like this movie's a little too serious for the English dub. But optional English subtitles, newly translated this release. New audio, we already did that. New video locations piece by CFK. This is phenomenal. And it looks like Army Venema was kind of like on vacation or something, and he just made this awesome, like not like saying he was lax or lazy about it, but no, like he made this amazing like location where he jumps around to all the cities and different places that the characters in this movie go, and he talks about the locations, walks in them, makes jokes, and just sets up all these nice little camera angles. It was incredibly in-depth, and it was incredibly intelligent and knowledgeable. It was one of these features I was like, man, he's really setting the bar on what he did with this one. Very impressive stuff. And I also have to give him a shout out for his great little featurette where I can't remember what movie he did, but he did a thing about the Hong Kong soccer team where all the players and the Shaw Brothers, I think it was Shaw Brothers at the time, were in the soccer team. Or what? Maybe it couldn't have been Shaw Brothers because Jackie Chan was in there, and Jackie Chan wasn't in the Shaw Brothers that long. But regardless, it was a bunch of famous actors like Sammo Hung and Jackie Chan and Yoi Buen. I can always terrible with his name, but a bunch of them were played like in soccer and stuff, and he gives their whole breakdown on team and makes his own super team, which is really cool. But just tons of knowledge. An archival interview with director Joe Chen. Yeah, I love this. I thought this was great. We also have a new writings booklet, Heroic Bloodshed Genre by Hong Kong cinema expert Camille Zerin. Looks great, sounds great, plenty of action. Love this one. Check it out, Eureka Films. Okay, this next one here is from Arrow Video, and this is a 4K of Lost in Space from 1998, a redo of the 60s television show. And the TV show was one that I would catch as a kid here and there. It wasn't, a staple of my childhood, a little before my time, but I used to watch a lot of late night TV when I was young, and, stuff like, Gilligan's Island and Lost in Space, and I Dream of Jeannie, Bewitched, all that kind of stuff would play, so I'd watch it here and there. Now, Lost in Space was a show that I like I said, vaguely familiar with. So I remember when this movie came out, I was about 12 years old, and my dad was excited to see it. This was something that would play on television for him when he was a kid. So, Lost in Space, I think he was a fan. And I remember we all sat down as a family, as we did at the time, go to the video store, get tapes and whatever, or actually my grandpa recorded a bunch of them, but we'd always watch all the new releases. I'd probably seen like every movie that was in a video store that had a main release from like 1990 to 2000. The family had a voracious appetite for new films and that kind of aspect. So watching this one here, Lost in Space, I think we are all pretty disappointed with it, honestly. It's like a 2-hour and 10-minute, space adventure movie, and it's really hard to do the television show. And with that, I've been revisiting a lot of this stuff that was released in the late 90s and early 2000s, and some of the stuff I had seen and some of the stuff I hadn't, like Swordfish and the Poseidon. So it's been kind of like eye-opening a little bit watching some of these, and some of the ones that I had seen a couple times, like I watched Breakdown not too long ago, and a lot of them do hold up. They hold up better than I remembered because it's like that last part of, when they're making a lot of these sets and they're making them practical, but then they're making the CGI, and the CGI is dated. It doesn't work exactly well, and Lost in Space is definitely that, but there's a lot of tangible objects that are on set that do work, and I do have an appreciation for that. And when I started Lost in Space, I almost immediately checked out. I was like, oh no, this is not for me. But I couldn't really compare it to the show as I don't remember it that much. More so in pop culture memories from other things like The Simpsons covering it, Danger Boo Robinson. Everybody knows that classic thing there. But but when I started watching it, and this is probably a problem I have with a lot of big adventure Hollywood like family movies. It's really hard for me to be invested almost right off the cuff. So I was sitting there, I was like, oh man, I don't know about this. William Hurt is deadly serious, being a method actor coming in here playing, the Professor Robinson. It's just like, I don't know, guys. I really don't know, because he's taking it deadly serious, and I think does something like this need kind of like a tongue in a cheek, like a self-awareness about it to understand, but would that ruin it? And then by the end of the movie, I was like, why would I doubt William Hurt? He does a good job, and he kind of has to have that serious attitude because his whole, the whole story arc and the dramatic points of the movie really evolve around him and his son and his future son and Jared Harris and all that kind of stuff like that. So I did come around and think that he did a pretty good job in here. There's also Mimi Rogers as the wife. She does all right. Heather Graham is decent. Matthew LeBlanc is in here from Friends, which is kind of strange because they mentioned in some of the features that he's basically doing kind of his Han Solo impression, and I would say he's the Han Solo type character of the film. But Matthew LeBlanc is basically playing Joey from Friends, and I don't know if I've ever seen him really kind of step out of that role and do other things. He's fine, but he's also just kind of like, I don't want to be rude or anything. He's one note. And last week I talked about Phoebe, Lisa Kudrow from Friends popping up in the parenting, and I was like, oh, she did a really good job. And I, like I said, I was reflecting back on Friends, I don't like the show. Okay, but I watched a lot of it, and I never thought the performances were necessarily bad. And I think Lisa Kudrow's kind of weird, quirky sense of humor kind of translates over to stuff like the parenting. Matthew LeBlanc, he transfers over to this, but he's very kind of one note, and that's just the way the character's written and he plays it. I don't know, maybe it's how he plays it, but I don't absolutely hate his performance or anything like that. But he's definitely the sure kind of like pilot, cocky kind of guy with one-liners here and there, but brave and overall good-natured, although arrogant sometimes. And there's a couple kids in here who are younger, very young, and they went on to do some other things. I'm not too familiar with them, or I don't even recognize them at this point. But the show stealer is, of course, Gary Oldman, who, is a really exceptional actor. He is known for being a chameleon, pop up in like Fifth Element, Professional, and what's the other one I'm thinking of that he pops up in there where you can't even recognize him? True Romance. But Gary Oldman's a great actor. There's no arguing there. And the thing about Gary Oldman in this one is I think he had the right mindset for it. I think he understood who the kind of villain was of the TV series and the villain was in this movie, and how he had to work and how he had to be evil but very self-aware of his evilness but play jokes on it. He somehow got the tone right, and I feel like I was like, okay, he knows exactly what movie he's in. And I thought he did a pretty good job, of course. So the story as it goes is they're trying to go somewhere and repair this gate so they can make this time warp. So basically the people of Earth, because Earth is dying, which is a classic science fiction kind of story here, right? What is it, Silent Running or something along those lines. But the Earth is dying, and they want to get to this time warp port and fix it so people can jump to this other planet and live easier and get there easier without having to travel years and years and years in space to get there. So that's their goal, and something goes wrong because a villainous like person that has their idea to get there first hires Gary Oldman to sabotage their ship with a kind of a robot that Boo Robinson actually. Danger Boo. It's Boo Robinson. All right, Will Robinson. What the hell am I getting? Boo Robinson. I'm mixing everything up. But Will Robinson kind of like messes with and puts him on his side. So there's that. But that's kind of the thing. And they get stranded in some isolated location where they have to fight like spiders on a ship, and they meet this little kind of creature that becomes a family friend and all that kind of stuff. And it ends up becoming a wild kind of time jump warp story and bonding of a father and family and all that kind of stuff like that, a father, son, and a family. Overall, I warmed up on it by the end. I was invested, and that kind of tends to happen with all these. I don't know if this is a movie that will, be something that's really important to me ever or super memorable to me, but it does play as kind of a, an underperforming box office movie that I think is decent. I don't think it's horrible, and I think it has a good cast. I think the cast does the best they can with what they have. There's some decent adventure stuff in there, and it's very much a product of its time. That goes without saying. So some of the digital effects don't age well, but you have to judge them on their own time, as a video essay on here does say, and I would agree with that. And the video essay that they have, Matt Donato, I think is his name, he does this film justice. He seems to be a fan, but he doesn't blindly praise it. I think it's an alright film. I think that maybe if you're incredibly invested in the Lost in Space, series, which I was not. Like I said, I've seen here and there. You might feel different about it. I know that sometimes as a fan, and you become possessive over certain things, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it too on certain aspects like that, But there's tons of features on here. It looked really good and it sounded good. There's good sound on here, a lot of explosions and space warps and all that kind of shit like that. But yeah, so we have 4K restoration approved by Stephen Hopkins. The director, actually, Stephen Hopkins, is a British guy who directed Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, which is one of my least favorite of the series, but he also directed Ghost in the Darkness, which is a great film. And from memory, it's been years, and Judgment Night with Emilio Estevez and Stephen Dorff and Dennis Leary, which I remember being also a really good film. Warner Archive put that out, so I'd like to revisit both those, and even Nightmare 5 when that 4K set comes out. But then we have Dolby Vision, original 5.1 surround sound, loss of stereo, optional subtitles, of course, archival commentary with director Hopkins and screenwriter Kiva Goldsman, archival commentary with visual specs Angus Brickerton and Lauren Ritchie, director of photography Peter Levy, editor Ray Lovejoy, and producer Carla Fry. A Space Odyssey, a newly filmed interview with Stephen Hopkins. He's pretty open about this and talks about getting this job and knowing Mike DeLuca from New Line and all that kind of stuff like that. Lights in the Sky, newly filmed interview with director of photography Peter Levy. Talks about working with Hopkins, and also all the actors on set talking about William Hurt being in character the whole time and Gary Oldman coming off Nile by Mouth, his directorial debut, so he was a gung-ho actor ready to help because he understood their plight. And then we have A Journey Through Time, a newly filmed interview with producer and screenwriter Kiva Goldsman. That's interesting, too. Talks about trying to marry the first of the series and the last of the series kind of deal. Art of Space, a newly filmed interview with supervising art director Keith Payne. I think people forget that a lot of the art directors and a lot of the special effects people that are hired in a lot of these sci-fi movies dating back all the way to Star Wars and before are British, and they do a lot of these effects and things like that. And I don't think people realize, Pinewood Studios, all that kind of stuff, that British people and British, studios are a big part of, a lot of the set design and things like that, and the thing as well. So yeah, Keith Payne talks a little bit about that. He doesn't talk about, British is great at that stuff. I'm just bringing that up, but he talks about, working on the film. Crafting Reality, newly filmed interview with Kenny Wilson, former mold shop supervisor at Jim Henson's Creature Shop. Talk about a deleted scene of the giant little creature version in the future. Sound of Space, a newly filmed interview with sound mixer Simon Kay and re-recording mixer Robin Donahue. Talk about how they got on the job and how, they have to fill quotas. Like Britain has to do their own stuff. That's why a lot of the people that do the sound in the United States don't even know what's going to happen to it, and vice versa. So they talk a little bit about that. Lost but Not Forgotten in Space, a new video essay by Matt Donato. I briefly talked about that. Deleted scenes, Q&A with original cast, bloopers, reversible sleeve featuring original newly commissioned artwork by Pi Par, collector's booklet featuring new writings by critic Neil Sinyard, and articles from American Cinematographer, and excerpt from their original production notes. So if you're a Lost in Space fan, I would recommend checking this out. So I didn't hate it. I actually did find some enjoyment out of it, and at first I was like a stick in the mud, but it won me over. Okay, next up in the martial law, Lo Wei's wuxia world, we have Death Valley. That's right. And I really enjoyed this one. So Lo Wei is in this film, and he's kind of like this old kind of master of this kingdom. I never know what their titles are, but he's basically the master of this place, and he has a family lineage underneath him, and he has a niece. I think it's a niece underneath him that has her eyes on taking over his position when he's gone. He's a amazing martial artist, and they're surrounded by a lot of martial artists as well. She's pretty good, but she's not the best, okay? So she realizes that Lo Wei is not going to pass on all the business to her. He's like, I want to call in my nephew. I hear he's really amazing at martial arts and he's really great. So he wants to send away for him to take over his position afterwards. This upsets her to great details. So she plans this kind of coup. She plans on killing him, but she uses her, sexual, stuff like that to kind of seduce a lot of these guys and get them on her side. And she just seduces this kind of badass fighter, and she has some help from somebody else, and they end up attacking Lo Wei and killing him. But not before he sent the note out to his nephew to come visit. At the same time, she also sends out for another childhood friend of hers that, maybe they had some sort of childhood romanticism back in the day. And he's the kind of the Weasley guy who played one of the villains in the other one. And she's sending out to him, basically, hey, the guy that you just met that gave you this note is the assassin of Lo Wei, and I want you to take him out. She's being very deceitful, using all these people against each other. But what ends up happening is these two guys end up crossing paths, and they become friends. They even exchange their kind of weapons, and they're both they have their own code and their own heroics and things like that. And you're just waiting for her to try to pit these guys against each other, and you're like, oh no, I hope this doesn't happen. But yeah, there's a lot of kind of intensity, and there's also a whole nother group of villains that are working for her that want to help her like take over and they are absolute monsters. They're completely ruthless. In fact, he's introduced pretty late in the film. I think he's also the guy in the ninja suit and stuff like that, but you don't really know who he is until a little bit later, where he's kind of reintroduced, I guess I'll say, where he's beating this family that owes him money. And one of his henchmen, who's also in the previous film as one of the chiefs, says something along the lines like, hey, you're going to kill him. And he whips his henchman in the face and says, listen, shut up. I'll do what I want. And he's beating this old man to like his near death until he gets the call and realizes that he's got to go meet this other person and things like that. And she's being used as well. But he's just, the way they use him is miserable. But it's got the classic trope here where the hero encounters a bunch of bad guys and he gets brutally injured, and he has to kind of like, he gets the help of like, some local villagers that he had helped earlier, and they kind of heal him and things like that. But there's a really tragic scene involving that family later on in this film. That's why I bring it up, and that it's funny that Flaming Brothers and Death Valley both share these like brutal scenes in the film. But overall, I thought Death Valley was great, and as the commentary says, with Army Venema and Mike Leader again, they're like kung fu and Hong Kong experts. They talk about how this is Lo Wei's most brutal and violent film, and I actually was taken back a little bit for the time, being the late 60s, early 70s, and when the people are killed, like, of course, the heroes are going to run through crowds of guys and cut them to ribbons, and they're going to die. But they do that classic thing where it looks like they're just holding like a blood pack and they'll throw it, which is kind of rare in the late 60s and stuff like that, when you're looking at stuff in the American counterparts like the Dirty Dozen from, 67? The Dirty Dozen, like, there's no squibs, there's no blood. I mean, a couple years later you'd have the Wild Bunch, where it's a fucking blood fest. But a lot of films did not, or Bonnie and Clyde as well. It's probably 67, but a lot of these movies didn't have the violence and stuff, especially in the Shaw Brothers martial arts world. Some did, but this one is particularly violent. And ends kind of on a downbeat ending here. But I really enjoyed Death Valley. I actually enjoyed it more than The Black Butterfly. And it has a lot of the same cast, of course. The two leads kind of are both from Black Butterfly and both in Death Valley. But the only features, I think, that are on there, we do have later. I think it's going to be on the third disc here, because I haven't got to it. This is the third film here, which is Vengeance of the Snow Girl. So yeah, we'll check that out, and we'll watch the A Dish Best Served Cold, which makes perfect sense for that release. But yeah, anyways, I'm enjoying this set. Two good ones from Lo Wei. Yeah, so far, and I'm sure the third one's almost as good. I doubt it will top Death Valley. Death Valley was pretty cool. Generic title though, right? Like, they mentioned that too in the commentary and stuff. It's just a generic title. Too many movies called Death Valley, but it just, people like it. Okay, this next one is from Cauldron Films, and this is Mad Foxes from 1981. Now, this is an insane exploitation movie from what? It would be Spain and Switzerland co-production. So, Cauldron went all out. Nice little kind of hard box here, 4K release of this one with a poster. Who would have thought Mad Foxes, the completely bonkers, nonsensical video nasties Section 3 list movie, would get a 4K? I know it's popular. I had a German import, and I think America here had like a really crummy full moon DVD that was, not very good looking. But the producer here is pretty known for working with Jess Franco, and he also produced a lot of really crummy movies that I've covered on the show. Some of the ones I really do not like. So when I watched Mad Foxes for 1981, I remember just being a really weird, kind of bonkers, crazy, exploitation movie with a kitchen sink approach, and that's most definitely what it is here. And I don't want to lift too much from the Troy Howarth video essay, but I will talk a little bit about that as well after this. But so Mad Foxes is as the commentary states, it seems sometimes like it's Frankenstein together, like it's 3 different movies, because a lot of the characters don't reflect on what just happened, and the revenge keeps escalating. So we have the lead from Hell of the Living Dead, one of the SWAT guys. The only 2 movies I've ever seen the guy in are Hell of the Living Dead and Mad Foxes. So he is taking out his girlfriend who just turned 18, right? Or is it? Yeah, just turned 18, and he's going to get her drunk, and he's going to take her virginity, because that's what classy, rich playboys do. And like just looking at it in 1981, you're like, that's still gross for 81. But he's trying to get her drunk. He goes to this kind of like mediocre bar, like, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna order some fancy champagne. And it's like, it's the only bottle they got in a chill glass. And he's literally trying to get her drunk. On the way there, some Nazi bikers, some of these crazy Nazi bikers, a group about several of them, about 7 of them, start messing with him, and he cuts one off and he crashes and dies in a brutal motorcycle accident. They just drive and like nothing happened and go get drunk. When they're leaving the bar, these Nazi guys kind of attack them. They beat the crap out of him, and they rape the virginal girlfriend, who disappears after this movie. She's completely gone. I guess our lead didn't want anything to do with her because she's no longer a virgin. Whatever. It's a nasty scene. Everything's done in such a stupid, ridiculously over the top way, and this movie has a lot of that. So like everything in this film. This is weird. Like, if you were to read all the stuff that happens on paper, you'd be like, oh, this is pretty brutal stuff. You got, like, people's family members getting murdered, people being raped, people getting shot, all sorts of, this long list of, bondage, Nazi exploitation, rape revenge, just gross, offensive shit, right? That a lot of, the people that watch this channel will be like, we gotta see it, or can't be, I gotta see it. But, it's just hit that laundry list of really fucked up shit. But it's so ridiculous the way it's told. The bikers are acting over the top, and when you watch it in English dub, they're just it comes across really bad, the dialogue and everything. But then when you go to the Spanish and read the subtitles, it's not much better. It's really not that much better. It's not like you're like, oh, this is gonna be a much more serious movie. Like sometimes if you watch a lot of Asian cinema, you'll put on the American dub, you're like, this is ruining this movie. But this one, you're like, oh, I gotta put on the Spanish because maybe it's a little bit, but no, it doesn't really make a fucking difference. Now, something like another Spanish rape revenge movie from not too long, 83, I think, Honey Ground by Jorge Grau, is a much better movie. And like, it does get crazy and a little over the top at times, but it never hits that peak of stupidity. If that makes any sense to anybody, because this movie is just so stupid most of the time. And I'm not saying that as an insult, like, this is stupid, don't watch this. It's vastly entertaining because it's so stupid. It's hard to be offensive. Does that make sense? It's kind of like when you'd watch a really stupid movie and people are like, oh, I'm offended. It's like, how could you even be offended? I never get offended of movies. It's just a movie. But how could you even be offended? It's so ridiculous. And that's a lot of this happening here. But it's your typical, if you're going to plan on getting revenge, dig 2 graves kind of story. So it keeps escalating back and forth. There's a point when he gets his martial arts buddies to kind of crash the funeral of the guy, and they beat the shit out of everybody, and somebody gets castrated. It never stops. And then they get retaliated in one of the most brutal, nasty scenes ever. So like, just an entire massacre, and it keeps escalating and escalating, and a bunch of innocent people get killed, until finally our hero has a human reaction and gets upset. Plenty of nudity, plenty of sex, plenty of depravity, and one of the most bonkers what the fuck kind of endings you would want in this kind of movie. The bad guys are memorable because they're so fucking ridiculous. One of them is this guy Eric Falk, who's in a bunch of stuff. He's a huge guy. There's tons of dong too. A lot of guys hang dong in this movie. So I guess it's equal opportunity for nudity in this one. But Mad Foxes is a movie that people will probably rate really low and enjoy, or rate really high because it's so stupid that you just have to like enjoy it on a weird, I guess you'd say, ironic way. But in reality, it never stops being entertaining. Like, if this movie was told seriously, I could see some of the action if it was done better. You get that Brigade of Death, the French film kind of mentality, although that movie's great and it's serious and it's well done and just over the top and insane, but in not such a insultingly stupid way. But this is too stupid to be insulting. It's just kind of almost Frankenstein patched together insanity, and it's exploitation through and through. As far as the features, we got a bunch. The Untold Story of Robert O'Neill, interview with actor Jose Gras. That is like 45 minutes long. So we have Erwin and the Foxes, producer Erwin C. Dietrich, plus actors Eric Falk and Heldy Stig talk about Mad Foxes. Eric, interview with actor Eric Falk. Nazi Fox, Bikers Must Die, a visual essay by Troy Howarth. That's great. That's 20 minutes or so. And Troy Howarth talks about kind of the history of biker films and actually Nazi exploitation. Just a brief kind of history, goes over them, talks all about that kind of stuff, and talks about this movie and has a little fun with it. Good video essay too. And then we have audio commentary by film critics Nanny Cobretti and Merlin Roberts, which is pretty good stuff. They come from, like, one says they come from like a strange film podcast or a strange film kind of magazine. I can't remember exactly where, but they talk about the movie and they talk about, you know, the Nazis taking off their swastikas when they're outside, and the weird co-production, and maybe it's cobbled together, all that kind of stuff like that. This is an oddity, and it's mostly popular because of its odd kind of way it's made. But a great release for this movie, honestly. A great cover art. Culture and Films is doing really well. I think most of the stuff they've released have been interesting to great. So check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. You got a Blu-ray with the feature and the film on there, and you got a 4K with just the commentary and the film. So check it out. Good stuff. As we move further to the Pete Walker set, we are on disc 5. And I got to say, The House of Mortal Sin, 1975, 76, 75. And this is my favorite Pete Walker one. This won me over. This is the end to that weird trilogy, I guess, when you start with, was the first one here, The House of Whipcord, which I love too, Frightmare, and this one. All written by the same guy, David McGillivray, and directed by Pete Walker, of course. Now, Pete Walker produced and had a hand in writing and all that kind of stuff like that. So, you know, he's really hands-on in these movies. So, The House of Mortal Sin, aka The Confessional, probably on DVD from Shriek Show back in the day, and now also Blu-ray from Kino. I don't remember what it was called under that title. But so I put this in, and there's a couple familiar faces. The guy from Die Screaming Marianne is in here, and he's a star in this one. So we follow this girl who has a really horrible boyfriend, and she lives with her sister, and they work at this kind of like antique style shop thing, and they recently kind of run into like a reverend, you know, a guy who's practicing to be a priest and all that kind of stuff, and he was from their childhood. Nice guy, young guy, a little bit more, you know, I guess you'd say progressive when it comes to terms of like the Catholic Church and everything like that. And this young girl, she's having trouble with her boyfriend. He's just an overall piece of crap, doesn't really want to, you know, commit to her. He's going around and sleeping around and stuff like that, and keeps leaving and everything. So one day she feels lost. She walks into this church, and she kind of is looking for her friend that she knows. Maybe she'll go into the confessional and talk to him, but she just needs to vent to somebody. And this old man that's in there takes her confession, and he's really interested in her sexual exploits, and he finds out everything that's happened, and he becomes obsessed with her. He kind of takes her keys that she leaves there and starts following her home. And at the time they're mentioning this in all the different commentaries, they're like, oh, the idea that a Catholic priest would be a killer back then was absurd. You know, it almost become a silly thing. And now everybody thinks, no, that's pretty much it. You know, the story checks out, you know. And I think we actually had in Toledo, there was this old case where I think a priest, I don't know if it was a Catholic priest, but a priest killed a woman and hid it. I can't remember exactly the case or something like that, but that happened, and it was unsolved for years until it was figured out. So I mean, it's not unheard of. And plus, you know, watching so many horror movies, it's just like Catholicism is deeply rooted in horror movies at this point. You know what I mean? Like, so the idea at the time was absurd. And the priest could get away with a lot of things like that. But so this priest becomes obsessed with her. He has this affinity for her, and he has his old mother who's like 90. This guy's like 60 himself. She's like 80s, late 80s, and she's an invalid. She's upstairs. She's having trouble, and he has a housekeeper that helps, and Sheila Keith from the 2 previous movies for sure, helping her take care of her. She's got like this darkened eye, like a partial darkened eye, and things start to get really fucked up because in the opening of this film, someone actually commits suicide, and she knew the priest. So the mother of that person is kind of snooping around and trying to figure it out. So a lot of these people are onto this priest, but nobody really believes it. And before long, the priest starts to commit even more heinous acts, killing people, covering up crimes, all that kind of shit like that. But the implements he uses are really fun because he uses some church implements to kill people, including, you know, the body of Christ and one of the kind of swinging like lantern type deals. And that's probably the most brutal death, to be honest. But by the end of this one, the way he manipulates the situation and the way things unfold, it's really tragic and really bothersome in comparison to some of the other ones. When I watched House of Whipcord, I was kind of shocked at a little bit of the downbeat ending and Die Screaming Marianne. When I first started watching his films, I was like, oh, these are kind of downbeat. Frightmare, I was like, it's kind of a little darker than expected, to be honest. And by the time we get to this one, I was just expecting something. I don't know why, but I was like, oh, this person's going to be fine. This person's going to be all right. And it's that idea that they're just not going to get saved in time that absolutely drove me insane. And there is a scene in here where, like, our lead, I can't think of the actor's name who plays the priest, but he has like these kind of like moments where he spills his guts out and tells you his motives and things too, like, and he confides in his mother, and you're like, this is really bothersome and upsetting. And Sheila Keith has one too, which is a really great performance here, where she talks about, it's basically an info dump, but and I think it's needed. I think it really adds context to it and changes everything and in the film. And normally people would say info dumps or exposition dumps are bad, but I think it works in this film. I really liked all the characters. I thought if I didn't like the people, I hated them, and that's a good thing too. So, like, I thought this was good, and I thought the ending was dark, and I thought it was fucked up, and I thought it was fitting. I thought this was his best movie. I thought it was a great movie. I really liked The House of Mortal Sin. This is just twisted. Really, really twisted, but excellently acted and scary. As far as the features go, we have brand new 2K master, looks great. Interpositive, of course. Audio commentary with film critics Kim Newman, Barry Forshaw, and writer David McGilvery. And I've heard their commentaries throughout this entire thing. They do a very good job. Audio commentary with film critic Sam Deegan. I like her commentary and everything like that. She talks a lot about other films too in comparison to this, which I can dig. Audio commentary with Pete Walker, moderator Jonathan Rigby, 2006, also good. And David McGilvery talks about his falling out a lot with Pete Walker during this one. He's like, man, we went at it. I couldn't write the first time I wrote the script, he said, this is junk. So, like, all that kind of stuff like that. You could see over time, like, they're kind of falling out and everything like that. Sympathy of Horror, interview with director Pete Walker. Actor Confessionals, interview with actors Norman Esley and Stuart Brevin. Great movie, 1975. If you like dark 70s movies, The House of Mortal Sin is the one for you. Great stuff. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about a couple 2025 movies. We're going to talk about Birthright. I know somebody picked this as a Patreon pick, but I'm trying to get my 2025s in before, September, when I'm probably going to start my 1983 movies. But, so Birthright. This stars, nobody I really knew, but Owen Campbell is in here in a small role. Love Owen Campbell from Super Dark Times and Candyland. Just a good actor, always does a great job. My heart can't beat with that one, too. He's just a good horror actor and other actor. But so this one, Birthright, I was kind of interested in this, be that due to him, honestly, and some other things. I had heard okay things. So what we have here is your classic kind of tale of trauma and loss. This woman's mother or aunt dies, didn't know she even had an aunt, and realizes, you've inherited this house in the country and everything like that. It's a lesbian couple, and she's like, oh, that's crazy. She's pregnant, and so the couple she's like, I really kind of want to stay out here. You can work from home, and I kind of want to teach piano lessons out here and everything like that. I think we can do really well. Almost immediately she meets this woman from the clinic, the local clinic, and it's obvious where it's going here. There seems to be some cult activity in this area, some weird activity. We have some red herrings and warnings, and people start to end up dead. This movie's incredibly too long for what it is. We have the classic drone shots over the house, which I'm getting tired of. It's like it's a drone shot. It's just like, okay, here we go. Every established shot has to be a drone shot, and I'm over it. It's a sign of independent filmmaking, which I'm not a fan of anymore. Not trying to dog on this movie all that much, but the acting is okay. The characters are they're what you expect. I don't have that much to say about it. It's too long, it's bland, and it's semi-predictable. I think if you cut like 15 minutes out of this movie and speed up the pace, if you get this to 85 minutes, I think it could be a pretty effective movie and an effective film. The ending does have some cool, iconography, some like pagan-looking stuff and ritual stuff, and I think the idea of the pregnancy horror is probably pretty scary. I mean, I'm not going to get pregnant, so I can't really relate to that, but I can imagine that idea is horrifying. The pregnancy or the loss of a child, stuff like that. So I can get behind that in kind of a cool, like, as a decent aspect. But overall, I just thought Birthright was a little bland and a little boring, And like every time you sit down to write a story or something like that, you're like, well, what we'll do is we'll have, somebody die and you'll have to go back to your old home. That's just something that people always want to explore, I think, to get over a lot of things in their own personal life, or it's just kind of a good way to, like, get back to somewhere where they used to know and have that feeling. But I think it's something that I'm a little tired of seeing at this point. Okay, next up is KPop Demon Hunter. That's right, I watched the animations, big thing on Netflix now. And this is not necessarily my wheelhouse in terms of animation. I love anime. I love like the old school kind of style of, Japanese animation and stuff. So this animation was a little bit, it took me a few seconds to get used to it. And this is more definitely generated at teens, probably teen girls. So what we have here in this world, there is demons, of course, and there is this, I don't remember exactly all their terms that they call, but they need to close this portal basically to hell, where these demons are coming through, and they're trying to take over this planet, and they're manipulate and be evil and kind of intoxicate everybody around. But the only people that can stop them are a group of three singers that are kind of reincarnated throughout different generations, and this woman finds the three singers and puts them together, and they're supposed to like sing and fight the demons at the same time, and through their music they can stop the evil, right? So that's kind of what they're doing, and they all have their different personality types, and they tell you their personality types, and they tell it in music, and they do it in song and dance and all that kind of stuff like that. It's entertaining, the songs are catchy, and it ends up being really heartwarming and touching all at the same time. So there is a special demon in hell who can sing really well, and he says, listen, I know how to stop these girls. I know how to get us to turn the tide on the people up there. Why don't we create a K-pop band, right? That this thing in Korea, that these these bands are really like handpicked. These people are picked, and they're fine combed, and they're fine whatever. They don't have really a life, and they have to be these super attractive people that are perfect to the public image and perform. So he takes like him and four other demons, and they have all these personas, and they all look supposedly great to all the girls and everything like that. And they come up and they start to compete with the other band, and they have this kind of battle of the bands for the souls of these people. At the same time, one of our lead kind of singer here has a dark secret that she's trying to hide, that of course the demons are going to figure it out. But when they start to figure out each other's secrets, and the two leads of the other bands start to know each other, maybe a love will blossom here. Maybe they'll understand it. But can you ever trust a demon? Can you ever really trust a demon? The villain here is cool because he's just portrayed as this giant ball of fire, kind of like Dormammu was in this Doctor Strange movie. Not a great movie, and maybe not a great portrayal for Dormammu, but Dormammu has always been a really cool kind of character in the Marvel Universe, at least kind of like this entity of scariness, but like just kind of like this big like flame, which is like, holy shit, that's scary. So I thought this was really fun. I thought it was touching, and it's going to hit all those emotional, like, heartstring beats. If you're invested, you'll really like it. You'll really kind of come away with some, kind of like maybe a couple teary-eyed moments or something along those lines. But K-Pop Demon Hunter, it's entertaining. Watch it with your kids if you got them. If you smoke, you got them. I just felt like I was that guy. It's like, if you got smoke, if you got them, smoke them. Like, that's how I said. But if you got, kids or a family or somebody's invested in stuff, I think you'll enjoy it. I enjoyed it. I was into it. But, K-Pop Demon Hunter, very fun movie on Netflix. Check it out. Okay, the Patreon pick here is Antiviral. Directed by Brandon Cronenberg. It's his directorial debut with cinematography by Kareem Hussein, who directed a bunch of wild kind of experimental art films in like Subconscious Cruelty and Ascension and La Bête, the Beautiful Beast. He's always been a great cinematographer, and Brandon Cronenberg went on, of course, to do Possessor and Infinity Pool, but it was years and years after this one here. But Antiviral was a movie that I had not seen. Oh, I should show it. Yeah, guys. Antiviral, the 4K here from Severin. Two different... It's so white. It's like the lead actor in this movie. The case is so white you can't even register it. But, I had heard good things about this. I had a Blu-ray, and then I got the new 4K and everything. So I was like, oh, okay. I'm glad it's a Patreon pick. I always wanted to watch it. Caleb Landry Jones stars in this. This is kind of like his big breakthrough role. And this is in a future kind of weird world, which maybe people at the time thought it was a little unbelievable, but most certainly is incredibly believable now, where everybody's obsessed with celebrities. So much so that there is kind of these kind of places where you can go there and buy diseases that come from celebrities. Well, you can buy a strand. This is the flu from Hannah Geist. This is a herpes strand. You could get it right on there, and they have these code viruses where like you can't spread the virus to anybody else. So once you get that directly from them, it's sealed. So like you get the flu, and that's that. And Caleb Landry Jones is one of their best salesmen, and he's basically selling stuff. But at the same time, he has like a machine cracker in his apartment, and he takes the disease, he injects himself with it, he cracks the disease, and he goes and sells it on the black market for extra money to a butcher. And the butcher in this world is essentially basically their jobs is to clone this flesh meat of celebrities so people can come there and buy, like, hey, I want 5 pounds of this celebrity to eat. The whole thing is so weird and so bizarre and so crazy and unnerving. Malcolm McDowell's also in here, another kind of classic actor, and the acting's really solid. The look of the movie, and it's kind of a weird look because the way they explained it was like they shot it on digital because they wanted it to be super bright white, but they somehow remastered it on film and the 4K. They explain it, and it's a really odd process that I don't remember 100%. But this movie reminds me in terms of like style to a certain extent, but more so theme and mood, as David Cronenberg's Cosmopolis, the movie that came out, I don't know, probably around the same time, and I thought that was a pretty good movie. I'd heard a lot of negative things about it, but I thought it was interesting, and I thought it was talking about a lot of stuff where society's headed, and I'm like, yeah, Cosmopolis feels like it is there, and I feel like we're getting more and more like that, except that nobody really, I don't think, I don't want to say anything like that, but I'm just saying, but an Antiviral, I think that it's looking into this weird aspect of culture too, of obsession, of wanting to possess those kind of people. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was Art Hindle in there who was running the company. But things get really fucked up when Caleb Landry Jones contracts a really dangerous disease, and it starts to go under the surface, and we start to see like all these kind of different, I guess you'll say like. Business, corporate espionage kind of starts to happen in this aspect. But Hannah Geist is kind of the big celebrity, fake celebrity in this movie that kind of everybody obsesses with. It's kind of their big centerpiece at the place where Caleb Landry Jones works. So she becomes this huge centerpiece of the film, and there's these weird kind of ideas that they have, like record her like begging for people to help her, which is like weird sexual perversion, stuff like that. So there's all these kind of different themes and elements that they bring up, and I feel like this does fit a little bit with something like Existence or Videodrome. And I feel like as much as Possessor and Infinity Pool do feel like Cronenberg, his father, I feel like Antiviral is the most like David Cronenberg's father. I feel like this fits more from that same cloth, and as he made more movies, he got a little bit further away, but still has that same taste. I know that last year, his David Cronenberg's daughter directed a movie, and I thought it was really good too. It was very funny, very different in terms of comedy, but Antiviral was pretty well done. I do think that it runs a little 10-15 minutes too long, but that's kind of what my thing is going to be about almost every movie, right? But I thought it was great. I would really recommend Antiviral. Visually, it's a strange-looking film, but I think it fits with the movie. I think it's a great lead performance. I think it's interesting concepts that are creepy and weird and unsettling, and Cronenbergs really don't give you much hope for humanity, do they? Any of them really don't. But I can understand that when you go to make a movie like that. But maybe so it's just an exploration of what the future holds for humans. As far as the special features are concerned, I have a commentary with Brandon Cronenberg and director Karine Husson. Disc 2, we have Broken Tulip, short film written by the director, Anatomy of a Virus, Making of, Reviving a Dead Cell. Brandon Cronenberg and Kareem Husson discuss the restoration. Brandon Cronenberg, a first-time director's vision, deleted scene with optional commentary by director and DP, first meeting with actors Caleb Landry Jones and Sarah Gadden. The design of Antiviral, interview with production designer Arverda Grewal, manufacturing celebrity, EPK with cast and crew. Disc 3, Cans Cut, introduction to Cans Cut by a director, of course, and a DP. Therapy 6.6 the thermal camera test, and exclusive booklet by Claire Downer of the Miskatonic Institute of Horror Studies. So yeah, really recommend it if you're into kind of heady horror films, weird horror films, kind of semi-disturbing stuff as well. Yeah, but let's get in these comments, concerns, and all that jazz. Ken Coakley. Reanimator is a special breed of film. The film came out in the summer of '85, which was a big year for horror, of course. I saw it in theaters in Boston. The film was released in an unrated film. Film was released as an unrated film like Day of the Dead. It was given an X rating. Wasn't given an X rating, but had a flag saying no one under 17 would be admitted. Packed quite a punch. It was my first exposure to Jeffrey Combs, who did a stage play at Somerville Theater here in Massachusetts, in which he played Edgar Allan Poe. He was also great in the House on Haunted Hill remake. The footage at the end was a great way to end the film. While he was funny and snooty in Reanimator, he wasn't scary, which was how it should have been. If he were a madman without the snooty demeanor, how were we supposed to believe that Bruce Abbott, who was married to Linda Hamilton at the time, would ever go along with West on such a nutty experiment? And Linda Hamilton is in tag with Bruce Abbott. When I first saw this film, I thought that David Gale was Fritz Weaver. There was a physical resemblance between Gale and Weaver. I agree. Barbara Crampton was hot. easy to see how Dr. Hill would have had the hots for Megan. She had a rockin' body. I wasn't too crazy about the cat dying and returning. A few years ago, I bought a hardcover book of Lovecraft stories and loved it. They were all short stories and not a bad story among them. Lovecraft was from my home state of Massachusetts. He was supposedly a racist. I don't know if it was true, so I choose not to pass judgment on him. But if it were true, I would have to enjoy his work and pity him. He was mentally ill, so it may have been. Yeah, I've heard that as well. Now, my favorite Eric Roberts film, King of the Gypsies. This was Eric Roberts' very first film. He was pretty unrecognizable in King of the Gypsies because he had a severe car accident that required reconstructive surgery. There's an interview with him from 1979, and he came across as shy and reserved. We didn't have cable in those days, but we had a pay TV service called Starcase. Every month, they showed about 30 to 40 films, including King of the Gypsies. It ran about 10 times or so. The cast was great, including Susan Sarandon and Brooke Shields, who had also played mother and daughter in Louise Malle's film Pretty Baby. Michael Gazzo, who played Sarandon's father in the film, was also a screenwriter who wrote a film for James Dean called The Stone for Danny Fisher, but Dean died and the story was renamed King Cruel for Elvis to make. Antonio Ray, who played Sarandon's mother, appeared in the film Hair as Treat Williams' mother. Judd Hirsch, who played the loser dad, was already finding fame by starring on the show Taxi. Oh shit! That's what he's most known from. I haven't seen Taxi in years. The kids who played Roberts and Shields characters as kids were TV stars. Matthew Labator was terrible with French names. Was on the Little Shop of Little House on the Prairie and starred in Deadly Friend. Daniel Burzbos was on the show Archie Bunker's Place. She was also in the film The Premonition. I've seen The Premonition, the one with Richard Lynch. Annie Potts was just coming off the Corvette Summer with Mark Hamill, and Ed O'Toole had just done one-on-one with Robbie Benson and fooling around with a sane Gary Busey. I still watched this a lot when the movie was on Starcase. All my schoolmates walked around and I wearing black leather long coats to try to look like Roberts. J.K. and T.E. Eddington was really good. It's being slept on quite a bit, I feel. I agree. Gray Nunez gives me a heart thing, thank you. Arwen Tears, nice pickups, Dave. Do you still collect VHS from time to time? Would love to see a tour of your collection. I do not really buy VHS anymore. I used to for a while, but I just it's an expensive thing, and I mostly used to collect them because they weren't on Blu-ray or DVD, and I got rid of so much that I probably regret, but I do not buy them anymore. But I kept the ones I still have. Nostalgia, and also some of them aren't on DVD or Blu-ray. Nick Moich from Belgium. It's been so long since I've watched the Reanimator trilogy. I want to reacquaint myself with those movies. Pity that Mr. Lovecraft himself didn't care for the stories those films are based on, as he was commissioned to write them. Frightmare is a film that stays with you, doesn't it? Sheila Keith is masterful in it. Good of Mr. Walker to allow her to display her immense talent, even if other directors in the UK did not. Yes. Questions. Have you seen the new Witchboard yet? If so, what are your thoughts? The few reviews I listened to are kind of mad about it. I will when it comes out. It didn't get a wide release here in the States. I mean, in Toledo, it didn't go to theaters. Who has done the best Lovecraft adaptation so far? Hard to say. I mean, Dan O'Bannon did a good one with The Resurrected. Fulci, when he touches the stuff, when it's Lovecraftian, like House by the Cemetery or City of the Living Dead, I think they're pretty good. But Gordon's good in his own way, although they're highly sexualized. So it's hard to say. Have you ever used a Ouija board? Anything happen? Probably. I wouldn't now. I don't know why I'm strange. I'm not superstitious, but I guess I am superstitious. I just wouldn't bother. I don't know why. Till next week, sir. God willing, if you find out you have a cannibalistic auntie or uncle, don't visit, and don't definitely feed them. I do not, unless one of them is not telling me something. Hudson. Hi, Dave. Your help. My local HMV has a Radiance film sale on at the moment. 2 for $22. Here's some of the titles that caught my eye. I have Vampiri, which is partially directed by Mario Bava, Ricardo Freda, which I've not seen, so I can't give you that. Planet of the Vampires, Scream and Scream Again, Panic in the Year Zero, Death Game, 77. Night of the Devils, Murder Obsession, Messiah of Evil. Senior review of Night of the Devils, so that's a must, so now I'm down for 3. I heard Murder Obsession is a good giallo with a big spider, enough said, but didn't Knock 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 was a remake. I didn't know Knock 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 was a remake of Death Game, so Dave, what would your 4 picks be? Many thanks. Then Way Up Dude gives me a hands, thumbs up, thank you. But back to Hudson. You got to get Messiah of Evil. So if you're getting Night of the Devils, Messiah of Evil, those two are you have to get them. And honestly, I'd get Planet of the Vampires. That's a great movie, precursor to Alien. So the other one, Scream and Scream Again is fun, but it's kind of sloppy. It's not any of those guys' great works. It's not Lee Cushing or Price's best work. Death Game I've actually never seen, but we have the Grindhouse release here that I have. Murder Obsession's all right. Also Ricardo Freda. It's his last film. It's not the best movie. I definitely would grab Planet of the Vampires, Night of the Devils, and Messiah of Evil. Those three. You figure out the other one. Panic in the Year Zero, I don't think I've seen with Ray Milland. It's like the post-apocalyptic one, right? Or pre-apocalypse thing. Yeah, I have that. I've never watched it. But yeah, those are the three I'd get. The other one's up to you. Maybe Death Game, maybe I Vampire. It's up to you. But yeah, let's get into this update. Okay, let's hop into the update. First up, Vinegar Syndrome order came in, so we got Sergeant Kabukiman N.Y.P.D. That's right. This is actually a trauma movie I've never watched, and I probably bought it 3 or 4 fucking times. I love Sergeant Kabukiman and Citizen Toxie, but yeah, I've never seen this one, so it's a deluxe-looking edition here, so yeah, I look forward to checking it out. Is it a 4K? I'm not sure. Then we have the Larry Fessenden collection here, which I had the Scream Factory. These are probably better. At least the covers and the cases are better. Habit, No Telling. I've seen No Telling, and I don't love it. I don't think it's that great of a movie, but hey, that's just me. But I am looking forward to finally watching Habit. I've seen the short version of that movie, and I'm okay with it. And then next up we have Playroom, which is a Manny Coto movie who directed Dr. Giggles. This is an underrated horror film from the 90s, if my memory serves me correctly. Shooter McGavin's in here, and I remember it being pretty fun, actually, but that's been a long time. Then we have Robowars. That's right. James Remar is in here. This is the VSA here. They're sealing their stuff now. So there we go. Check that out. Next up, we have Castle of Evil. So terrifying. The Chamber of Horror lives again. And this is the VSL, I believe. Yeah. And then we have the cinematography. And this is Mixed Blood, the Paul Morrissey film. And they've wrapped the damn thing so well, it kind of crushed it. These are like collector problems. It's all dented now down there. But yeah, heard of this one, never seen it. I've seen a few Paul Morrissey movies like Bad, and of course the Flesh for Frankenstein, Blood for Dracula, so I'm interested in checking that out. And then we have The Confessions of a Psycho Cat and The Fat Black Pussycat. Yeah. These look pretty crazy. And what else do we get here? We got My Crepitus. I Never Left the White Room from Saturn's Core. This is a Maggot movie, and I have seen this, and this movie is bonkers, and it's cool to see Maggot's movies get a wide release somewhere. That's cool. I hope people discover his vision of movies. His movies are wild, and he puts a lot into them, a lot of stuff. We have Permeant Damage, a suburban gangster story here, and this is the Canadian line. This is VHS Shitfest, okay. And yeah, it looks pretty ridiculous. There's a price to pay for being a gangster. Money, power, women, and death. Oh, no. No! And then what else is coming up? Oh, I love this movie. So happy to see this get a release. Freeze Me. Ishii movie here. He just had a box set released in the UK that I need to pick up, but hey, I didn't even know about it. 4 great movies in that. I've seen 2 of those that are coming out. So what do we got here? So this one here, Freeze Me. This is a great rape revenge movie. One of my favorite ones, and I don't hear too many people talk about it. It's great to see it on Blu-ray. And then we have a couple other ones here. We have the 4K of Hong Kong Cinema Collection from Shout Factory, City on Fire. Very happy to see this get a Blu-ray. 4K. 4K. I never thought these movies were going to get 4Ks, but that just makes me very happy that it's out. And then we have a Kino Cult here. Paul Naschy werewolf movie, Frankenstein's Bloody Tear. That also makes me very happy that this got a Blu-ray. I don't know. How many more of the Paul Naschy, Dan Zinski werewolf movies are there to be released on Blu-ray? But I think that might be almost all of them at this point. But yeah, let's get back to the video. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.